Hello and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be doing an absolute beginner guide to animation. Let's jump into it. Okay, so here we are in Blender. Now, I'm going to try and make this as beginner friendly as possible. If you've never done animation before, this is where you want to be starting, okay? Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about the big picture. So how does animation in a computer animation software program work? And what is it that you're doing to make it happen? So let's take our default cube. I'm just going to click on it, and we've got our timeline down here. I'm just going to bring this up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So right now, the start of my timeline is frame 1, which is right here, and the end is frame 250. Now, if I press the play button, you can see we play through and nothing's happened because we haven't done anything yet. But this is how we can play back and view our animation. I'm going to click this button here to jump to the start of my timeline, and I'm going to set a keyframe. Now, what's a keyframe? A keyframe is we're storing the positional information of an object at a certain frame. So I'm saying this object at this frame is going to have this location and this rotation and this scale. Now, in the little orange box, the object properties, when you select an object, you get object properties. You see they change when I select the camera because it's in a different position and rotation. But if I select this cube, we can see that it's at the location of 0, 0, 0. So 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and 0 on the Z. And it's got 0 rotations. So it's not rotated at all, and it's set to a scale of 1. So it's very basic, straightforward. Nothing's been done to this cube. Now, I can set a keyframe for this. There's several ways to do it. You can click the little button next to each of these channels right here. You can see it turns yellow. Yellow means that it's got a keyframe on it. And you get this diamond shape. And then also, and you see in our timeline, we get this diamond here that shows up. Now, this is like an object. I can hit G to grab and move it around and position it wherever I want in my timeline on whatever frame I want. And what this little diamond represents is this X location. So if I click this little drop down, you can see this summary. I can click this button right here. You can see if we open this little drop down, it gives us a summary, tells us what's going on. Here it is down at the very bottom level, X location. And we've got all of these extra keyframes. Looks like we've got a bunch of keyframes. It's all just one, actually. It's just showing me, the way Blender works is with these hierarchies, it always shows you if there's any key on this frame, it'll show up on the summary level. All right, now another way of doing it is select it. And let's go here, and I'm going to hit I. And I brings up the insert keyframe memory. And you can insert a keyframe for any of these things, and we can just say, okay, I'm going to insert a keyframe for the location. The other thing you can do is come over and hover over the channel box themselves and hit I, and that will set a keyframe there. That'll do it quickly for all the channels. So hopefully that makes sense. I can set one here for scale as well. And so now we've got a keyframe for everything. Now you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 keyframes, but we only see one in the timeline. Well, if you open it up, you can see now we've got all these channels added to the list, and each one has its own keyframe. So we've set a keyframe here at this frame. So let's see what happens. I'm going to go forward. Let's go to like frame 80 maybe. And I'm going to hit G and Z, and I'll move the cube up, and I'll move it forward, G and X, right over here. And I've got a couple things that have changed. So all these channels are now green, and we've got this orange channel here on the X and the Z. So what's this telling me? And I don't have any diamonds in my timeline. So what's being told to me now is that the green means this channel has a keyframe on it somewhere. So there's some positional information stored, or rotation or scale information stored for this channel somewhere in my timeline, but not on this current frame. Orange means there's a keyframe somewhere for this channel, and it's different from the current value of the object. So that means, hey, you've moved this, but you haven't made a new keyframe yet. It's kind of a warning, this orange color. It's sort of like, hey, you've changed this channel. It doesn't match the only keyframe that you've got. And the reason why this is a warning is because if I move my playhead now, Blender's going to first check, all right, it sees where it is right now, and it's going to look for any keyframes. It goes, oh, is there a keyframe for the X channel? And it goes, oh, yep, there is. So when I move, say I go to frame 79, it's going to find the keyframe, and it's going to say, all right, you've saved this value as the X location. So this value is important. I need to keep this value for the X location no matter what you've done to it, okay? And so it will reset this orange value back to whatever it is that's saved in the keyframe. So watch, if I go one frame back, let's say, or even no frame, I just click click on my timeline, you can see it resets back and it goes back to 0, and I've lost that position. So this can be kind of frustrating if you're not used to it as a beginner. You're like, you set a position, you spend a lot of time, you get it just where you want, and then you click somewhere and it resets. And you're like, oh, I've lost all that work. It's really frustrating. So there's one way to get around that. So first thing is just to, be mindful of that, right? And let's get it back in our position, and you make sure you keyframe it. So I can either just click just for this channel. So now I've saved the X value. You can see I've got a new keyframe there, and now it's not going to lose the X value, but it will lose the Z. So you can see it's kept the X, but it's got rid of the Z because I didn't set a keyframe for that. So the first thing you can do is just always remember, hit I to set a keyframe when you make a change. That's important. The other way, if you don't want to think about that, you just want to focus on the position of things, is to turn on auto keying, which is this button right here. So if you click this, now any change you do, so let's see, I'll go here, let's say, and grab Z, and you can see instantly it's set a keyframe for everything. All the channels that have keys already, it's set one for it at this frame, without me having to hit I or set a keyframe or anything. So this can be really handy for moving quickly because it saves whatever pose you do, whatever position you put something in. However, it can be very destructive if you're not careful, because if you don't remember that you have auto key turned on and you make some tweaks to see what something looks like, you might accidentally overwrite an important keyframe that you've already done. So there's benefits and sort of costs of both. So you have to be careful and think about, which one you want to use. I tend to work with auto key turned on. I find that's a really fast and efficient way to work, but you just have to be mindful that it's on and remember. Let's delete those keys. So I'm going to just drag a box around them and then hit delete. So that's how you can get rid of keys. You can interact with these like objects. Think of your keys as like objects in a scene, but they live in the timeline. Okay, now let's make some really simple animation, and we're going to talk about how to approach animation. So I'm going to go to frame 60, and again, I'm going to move it forward on the X and up on the Z. I've got auto key turned on, so I can see I've automatically got a key. And then let's come over to frame, 120, and let's bring it back down on the Z. I want it to match this Z position, so I know that that was 0. So I can just type that into the channel box, and now I know it's back to where it started. But I'm going to move it forward more on the X, right? So now, if I look at my playback, you can see I've got this arc motion here with my cube. Ta-da! So you can see the Blender is interpolating between these positions. We've got this position, that one, and it's creating everything in between to make that thing move. So that's kind of the essence of computer animation. The computer does a lot of animation for you. Now, what does this look like? Let's have a look at the graph editor. The graph editor is one of the really important tools of an animator. Let's switch over to the graph editor. We're just going to click on this little icon here and switch this layout view to the graph editor. And we can have a look at what's going on here. Now, there's a couple of settings that make the graph editor really, really intuitive to use. It's quite helpful. I recommend making these changes. So let's do those together real quick. I'm just going to open these up. We have all the channels that have keys listed for this object. You can see the object name there. And it shows us a curve that represents the value of each of these channels over time. Now, let's come up to Preferences. We're going to go to Animation. And right down here, Unselected Opacity, I recommend turning this right down. This makes the channels that aren't selected, you can see the graph curves, they start to disappear. I like to turn these right down so they're not distracting me. The other one you need is right here, this little tick box only shows selected F-curve keyframes. Now this used to live, if you're working on an older version of Blender, it's going to be under the View menu of the graph editor, but they've recently moved it into here, into Preferences under Animation. So just come over here and turn this on. Only show selected F-curve keyframes. What that's going to do is basically whenever I select a channel here in this list, it will show me the keyframes just for that. And this means that I can easily, if I have a bunch of channels up, I can select a bunch of keyframes, or I can focus in and just select one. This is just a much easier way of working. Usually what happens in Blender is if you draw a box over this, it'll select any keyframe, even if the channel's not selected. And that can be really frustrating and confusing. So let's have a look at the Z location for this cube. You can see, we see the curve going up and going down. The Z is the up and down. And you can see how visually that's represented in the graph. I can grab this with G and I can move this graph point around, move it up and down. It's going to change how high it goes. And I can also change the timing of it, so I can have it go up quicker and then down slower. You can also hit S to scale, and that will change these handles, which change the interpolation, so the speed of these things. You can see we've got a slightly different feel to it. So you can easily come in and begin to manipulate your animation using these curves. So I can grab, I know that we're just using the X and the Z, so I can control click those two channels just to see them. And I can grab, this, and I can grab an X and bring it in to make it happen quicker. I can grab here and grab an X and drag this in, maybe grab this over, and then we have a look, we have a much different, animation than before. And I can change how far it goes. Let's say I don't want to go that far. So I'm going to go up and down. There you go. Cool. So you can manipulate the animation in really cool ways. You can also rotate these, which is fun. You can get some neat results out of that. And there's a logic to it. Like I could, if I want this thing to like hit the ground and bounce, I could scale the Z Bezier down to 0, right? So I could hit S and 0, and then I could come forward and select the Z location, and I can use the insert keyframe menu in here as well if it's quicker. So I can hit I, and I'm going to set a keyframe only for the selected channel. I can grab Z and bring it up, and I don't want it to bounce as high the second time, so I can see this curve and I go, okay, I just want it to go a little bit, and then we come forward, I only select the channels, GZ, bring it down, S0 to scale down, and I'll just line that up. It's like, all right, cool, something like this, and I might scale that out so it's a bit of a slower arc. So now it's going to go bonk, bonk. See, it's really cool. Nice little. So this is how you can use the graph editor and the timeline and the insert keyframe menus, all that stuff to begin to animate and create really cool actions for your objects in your scene. So in my full-time job, I work in feature film animation. So in feature film animation, we actually don't rely on these curves as much as you might think. A lot of the work is actually done in a stepped form. Now let me show you what step keys are, what they look like, and then we can talk about how to use them. So I'm going to hit A to select all the channels, A to select all my keyframes, and then I'm going to right click, and you get this cool menu with a lot of different options. You can do stuff in bulk to your keys. This one here, interpolation mode, this gives us lots of different options for interpolating between keyframes. So like how does Blender create the motion out of a key into another? You can do some cool effects like bounce and elastic, does some automatic kind of bouncy effects. But typically there's these three, using constant, linear, and Bezier. Linear is just a direct line. So if I switch to linear, you can see everything goes quite geometric, quite pointy. And if we look at the animation on playback, it's donk, 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 donk. There's no speed up, no slow down. It's just direct line. So that's one way of manipulating stuff. I tend to like, whenever I'm doing that, I'll keep it on Bezier and I'll just scale the point to 0 like we did down here. That allows me then to like keep it Bezier, and if I want to, I can always, if I scale to 0, I can always click on it and like click again, and you get that like white line around the black dot, and that means you've grabbed one of those handles because they're all in the same spot. And I can hit G and I can just grab it out. And that way I can get those back if I want. I just like working that way, but it's the same as just switching this to linear or switching it back to Bezier. Anyways, so let's select all, right click, interpolation, constant. All right, so what's going on with this? It's a bit confusing in this view, so let's look at our Z location again. So you can see here, our keyframe that we've set at this point on frame, whatever it is, 19, is 0. And if I come forward, we scrub forward, we get to the next keyframe, the value is 6.6569. Anyways, Blender's not doing any interpolation at all now. With step keys, it's just taking you from this value to this value, and it just immediately changes on the frame where you set the new key. So you get this stepped motion, basically. It's like bonk, bonk, bonk. Now, when you're blocking out animation, sometimes this mode is really, really helpful to get a really clear idea of how your poses look and where they're going. And this is actually the mode that we use when we're sculpting out a new performance with a really complicated character or a simple object. We tend to use this mode. So let's create some animation using this mode, and I can talk about these concepts for you. I'm going to go back to my timeline. And let me explain this too. So right now, if I wanted to delete all my keyframes and start over, I would have to first come over here, hit A to select all channels. That will make all the keyframes appear. And then I could hit A over here to select all the keyframes. And then I could hit X to delete them, or I could hit the delete key to delete them. Sometimes it's easier just to go back to the timeline and then box select and delete. That's like one less click, maybe. Anyways, and then I'm going to reset my cube. Just click and drag down and set that back to 0. I'll go back to my beginning. Now, we don't have any playhead controls when you have the graph editor up, and that can be a bit annoying if you want to like just jump back to frame 0. So what I like to do is click here and drag up. This will create a new window, and then we can switch this to the timeline. And now I've got those playhead controls, so I can use those to just move around really easily. So I'm going to go back to frame 1. And let's create some animations. So I'm going to create a ground. That'll help me think about things a bit better. So I'm going to go Shift A, Mesh Plane, scale this plane up, and then I will grab Z. I'm going to set this guy right on the plane. So I'm going to first bring him up so he looks like he's sitting on the plane. And let's go ahead and also turn on rendered view just so we can, why not see it in rendered view. And let's take our point light and we'll come up here. We're going to turn off scene world, and I'll just pick one of the built-in HDRIs. Just turn that strength down a little bit, maybe turn the world opacity up so we can see it. And then let's take our cube and let's give it some color. I'm going to give it a base color of like red, maybe. Looks nice. And if we want to make it look really nice, we can come to the modifiers and add a bevel modifier. Boom. Segments 2, right click. Shade auto smooth. Look at that. So much prettier. Now, often when you're animating things, especially in a professional context, you'll have something called a rig for the object. And you'll hear that term thrown around a lot if you're learning Blender for the first time, and you may not be totally familiar with what that means. So let's actually roll this into what we're doing so you become familiar with the idea of a rig and what it is. The basic concept is a rig is like a puppet. It's a control system for a puppet. So you can adjust the controls to adjust the puppet's position in space. And that's what you animate. You animate the rig, and the rig is what moves the puppet around. Now, with our cube, we could just grab the cube and animate it. But if we want to do some things like have its scale change, for example, or have it, bounce off the ground, sometimes it's easiest to put the pivot point at the bottom of the object. Now, what's a pivot point? This orange dot right in the middle, this is the point from which everything happens. So the translation and the rotation and everything. So this value of 0.95933 meters on the Z, that's the location of that orange dot in 3D space. So that's how high up that is. If I was to scale this cube, let's say we wanted to like squeeze down and bounce up. If I hit S and Z, it's going to scale to that orange point. And that doesn't look right because I want it to sit on the ground. I want it to scale down to that point down at the bottom. Now we could move the pivot point of this object and just put it where we want it and just keep it there. But for the sake of understanding rigs, let's actually use a rig to do it. So let's rig the cube. All right. So what we're going to do is go Shift A, and we're going to come down here to empty, and we're going to create, it doesn't matter, any kind you want. I'm going to grab a circle empty, I think. You can see right here, if I click on the little empty options, the data block for the empty, the tab here, you can switch it to any type you want. So you could use like a square or a sphere or something. And empties are just a position in 3D space, position, rotation, and scale in 3D space. And that's it. That's all they are. So they don't render or anything, but you can use them to do all kinds of things. And what we're going to do is, let's see, I'll grab the circle and I'm going to rotate it on the X 90 degrees, and I'll scale it up a bit so I can, kind of see it there. And I want this to be the thing that we grab when we're controlling our cube. So I'm going to click on my cube, and this will be my rig, basically. In fact, let's rename it from empty. We're going to call it cube rig. Let's click the cube in our outliner and then control click the cube rig right here. And then I'm going to hit Control P, and we're going to set parent to object. Parenting in Blender basically just means you're taking one object and you're putting it underneath another one so that whatever you do to that top level one, the bottom one inherits whatever it is you've done. So now we can grab the empty, and as we move it around, it's going to take the cube with it. And you can see, because it's positioned down here at the floor, we can like scale Z now, and it's going to affect the cube itself. You can't really see the scale with the empty because it's a flat circle. If I switch it to like sphere or something, you can see that the empty is actually what is scaling, and it's just taking the cube along with it. There we go. We've just made a rig. We've rigged the cube. That's as simple as a rig can be. Rigs can be very, very simple. And the whole idea is it's just a simplified way for an object to have some controls that an animator can work with. So now let's do a really simple animation using stepped keys. Now I want to use stepped keys. I don't want it to switch to Bezier. So I'm going to actually set my preferences here in animation from default interpolation to constant. So this will give me constant automatically. So I'm just gonna, I'll delete, hit A over here to select all channels, A here to select everything. We're just gonna start fresh. And I'm going to set keyframe for everything just with I. And then I'm gonna come forward to frame 20. And I'm going to hit SZ and scale this guy down. I'm gonna click on the scale tool right here. I'm gonna click this box and that will scale it up on just the X and Y, but won't scale it on the Z, right? So now you can see we squish out as we scale down. So he's preparing to jump. So boop, and then let's come forward a bit. And then we're going to, let's reset the scale back to what we had before. So I can actually come over here, open up the channel box. I can shift select the scale channels, and I can box select. This is actually X, Y, and Z. They're all in the same spot because they all have a value of, well, whatever their value is. Go over there, that 1.94. So they're all the same value. So I can come here and I can either Control C, Control V, that will paste it, or I could Shift D and that will duplicate. And then I can hit X to lock it, for example, on the X, and I can put it anywhere I want. So that's one quick way. You can also do that from the timeline. So I could just come here, Shift D, and drag it out and click that there, and now that's duplicated this key. Everything that's here, which you open down the summary again, it's all the channels. We've duplicated all that information, and we've brought it over and put it here. And Blender will overwrite. If you set the key on top of another key, it will erase everything that was on that other key and just use the new value. And for this one, I want it to be kind of launching up into the sky. So I'm gonna come up with it and go in with it. And then I'm going to come forward and I want it to kind of like pop up. So I'm going to grab Z, bring it up, and I'm going to open up the summary. So I'm going to take the scale here. I'm going to select those and Shift E. Notice these get highlighted as well. It's because think of these as like summaries. If I fold this down, it's just telling me, hey, there's a key that's selected here. It doesn't tell me what the key is. If I open it up, that's how you can find it. And Shift D and just drag it over and click here. And that will set the scale back to the original. So now we've got boop, boop, boop. And maybe we rotate a little bit as well. So I'm going to switch to the rotation tool. And I'll just rotate a little bit. And then maybe bring it up a little bit. All right, let's play that. Let's set the end of our animation to 160, frame 160. So we'll come here to end and we'll type 160. And now if I hit play, there we go. So it's way too slow, right? But what's cool is we've got all these keys now set, and each one is a specific pose. And now what we can do is we can play with the timing by just moving these around. So I can go over here and say, all right, let's have it. We want this bit happen a bit quicker. So I'm going to grab this, bring this here, grab this, bring this here, bring this here. Let's see how it feels. Now I want this bit to be a bit slower, and then I want us to go pop and then really quickly pop up like that. And then this one, I'll bring this one over here and this one over here. I want these to kind of all happen relatively quick succession. I can also B to box select, grab all these. I can also put my playhead like at the first key and hit S to scale, and it will proportionally move all those keys closer together. here. See how that feels. Nice. Set my timeline to end at 60. So you can see how just moving these guys around, we're able to kind of create a sense of timing with the animation. And that's really a huge part of what animation is. It's all about timing, getting really strong key poses and then getting good timing. Now, when would we turn this back into computer animation, right? Letting the computer spline things out. Well, technically we don't need to. We could keep it like this, or we could even add more poses if we wanted to. So I could have a little bit more control. Like what does the speed feel like between this shot and this pose and this pose? It's like if I go right in between the two of them, do I want it to quickly squish or stay big and then go, or do I want it to go, you know? So let's think about it. It's like when I jump, I'm going to go down and up. So I'm going to kind of quickly move out of the first pose and slow down into the second. So this one's actually going to be pretty similar to the other one. So if I come here, I can actually Shift-E to duplicate. So I've just copied the pose, right? And now I can go to the scale tool and scale up and scale in, scale down a little bit more. See how there's not much difference between that pose and this pose? But there's a lot between this one and this one. And with it being right in between the two of them, it's going to give that impression of it going through. Cool. All right. So I like the way this feels now. I feel like I've got enough poses in here that really define the animation and the way it's moving and how it looks. So now let's take it and add the interpolation to it. So I'm going to switch over to the graph editor and I'll just hit A to select all channels. And now you can see, I can't see everything. There's one way you can bring everything into view is to click normalize. This will basically take all the values and kind of bring them roughly so they're visually in the same space. Sometimes you'll have something where a key's like way up high compared to something else, and it's too hard to get a sense of how they all move. So you can use normalize to do that, but it's no longer going to give you like an accurate representation along the side here of the value of every key. But that's all right. Using control in the middle mouse button, you can easily zoom around, and letting go of control middle mouse button just lets you pan around. So that's an easy way to use it all. So once everything's selected, hit again A to select all channels, A to select all keyframes, and now right click, and we're going to set to Bezier. You could also come over here to key and interpolation mode Bezier. All right, so there we go. Now we've got Bezier curves. Let's see what this looks like. You can see it's pretty cool. It's lost some of the punch, right? And that's because it's easing into everything, right? So we can either at this point go back to constant and set some more hold poses and some more key poses to define everything. Or what we can do is we can play with the curves and try and get to the result that we're after. So one thing I know is if I go to the Z location, you can see every time it lands, it slows down into the land and then speeds up out of it, which isn't realistic. Usually something falls, and as soon as it hits, it's a hard stop and immediately starts to jump. So I can grab this and hit S0 and then enter, and then over here, S0, and then this one too, S0. So every landing is a really hard stop. So let's have a look at that. Boom, boom, boom. See now those feel punchy? Really good. Now also you can see that this scale down that we've done, it kind of feels like it slows up, speeds down, slows up, speeds down. Let's have a look at the scale. The graph editor is really, really helpful because you can actually see visually when there's weird bumps in your curves, and that can be a big clue as to why something doesn't feel right. So let's have a look. Here we go. Bam, 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 bam. Now we want this to be a gradual sort of continuous motion. So if we look here, you can see this curve especially, like we just look at the X, right? Try and get a scale that lets you see this. You see how it kind of goes up and then it dips and then it goes back up again? So we don't really want that. Let's select them all again so they're all visible. And I'm going to beat a box set. This grabs the Z and the X, and I can just rotate this a bit so that this spline line, like the handle, is pointing at the next key. This means it's going to ease into this position and then linearly move towards the next one. Okay. You could also take this, maybe grab Z, move it up a little bit to kind of make that curve feel a little bit more like a proper arc. That's one of the keys. It's like having one of the keys is to have these shapes that are really smooth, clear arcs. So grab Y, I'll move this one down a little bit, and I'll just take this and I'll rotate it some just to make sure it feels good. Just looking at it, it's nice and gradual. It's no weird wobbles in my curve. See, now it looks pretty good. And there you have it. We've got some cool animation. So I hope that was really helpful, breaking down the ways to approach animation, how it works, and what you could be doing to create really professional looking animation really quickly in Blender, just using the default cube. Hope you learned a few cool things and you're excited about your journey into animation. I hope you continue to learn and explore. Now, if you want some more information about animation, you can watch some of my other videos that I've done. I've got a really great one that covers the basics of a walk cycle using a droid character that I made. And also I have a really good one that breaks down the nonlinear animation editor. Now this is another tool in Blender, one that I don't really use a whole lot for my animation, but it's there and it's worth knowing about. So if you want to check those out, you can have a look there. And that's it. You can do animation now. I hope you start making some cool stuff. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Thanks so much for watching. Special thanks to all the Patreon supporters and everybody that supports by joining on YouTube. Really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to watch more content when it drops. And please leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this one. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much. I will catch you in the next tutorial. Until then, have a fantastic week. See ya.